Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Tom Rivera, and welcome to our history project, the South Colton Oral History Project. And the purpose of the project is to get an idea of how it was growing up in South Colton during the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Our guest is well, before I introduce our guest, we're at Cal State San Bernardino. We're in the Fowle Library on the fourth floor. And the committee member that's with us on the panel is Mr. Henry Vasquez. Henry, welcome to our taping this afternoon.
Thank you.
And also behind the camera is Mr. Frank Acosta, who will be taping for us this afternoon. And our guest is Ms. Rose Mercado Robles. Rose, welcome to Cal State, and particularly welcome to this oral session this afternoon.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
We will be talking about growing up in Colton, eh?
Okay.
And you told me earlier that you were born and raised in Colton, and that means that your mom and dad came to Colton. When did your mom and dad come to Colton?
I don't remember exactly, I just remember what she used to tell me. They lived in Oro Grande for a time,
Okay.
and then they came down and they settled in Colton. And that was when the PFE was still in effect, and a lot of my relatives worked there. I don't know. It's
So your dad worked in Oro Grande for a while?
I think he did, and I don't know if that's where he got his arm hurt, but he broke the arm, and then after that.
Yeah, so Oro Grande, and then from Oro Grande to Colton, and I would imagine in Oro Grande he worked at cement plant. And then
Probably, but I couldn't guarantee.
And then in Colton, he also worked for the cement plant for a little while.
No, I don't think he
No?
went that far, no.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. And if he did, I never heard of it.
And you said your dad got injured. What happened? What was his injury?
Well, he broke an arm, and after that, I guess he didn't do heavy labor or anything like that. And what he did, he grew his own, he had dairy cows, he had a lot of running chickens and stuff for eggs, and then he had goats. And at one time he had, I don't know how many cows, and he would make cheese out of it and sell the cheese and the milk if anybody wanted it. But other than that, he mostly was home. He was around, he could be a merchant, he could work in a store, but I don't think he really wanted to work.
Well, you know, it's amazing because I never knew that about your dad, that he was kind of a farmer.
He
Kind
did
of
everything.
Grew his own vegetables.
Yeah, he did.
Took care of some animals, some chickens.
Yes.
And then he was able to provide for the family with what he
Somewhat.
had.
Yes.
No, but I meant with the
It never was
with the milk and
Milk
the
and
eggs.
cheese, yes.
And cheese. Tell me about how did you get? He made cheese.
He made cheese, and we were all there to witness it. They had these big tubs, and they would pour the suero or what they take out of the milk, pour it in there, and he would put some stuff in it, and he would let it sit overnight or something, and then it would coagulate, and then they would break it up. We would break it up. We would shred it, not shred it, but cut it in small pieces.
So it was a family affair then.
Yes, and then we would put it in a little grinder, and we made the cheese out of it.
And then he would sell the cheese to.
He would sell the cheese to merchants or whoever wanted to buy it. And he would make it little
Tortillitas.
tortillas.
And you said that he also had goats?
He get some goats, and he had cows, dairy cows, and I remember one time, there was an incident where they all got up and they were all dead with their feet in the air. They must have had some bad press or something. There must have been like around 9 cows that were lost.
It was a large number of
Well,
cows.
he had quite a few cows in his one lot, and apparently they had some bad grass or something, and they were all with their feet up in the air like that.
And chickens, you said he had chickens.
We had chickens, sometimes we would have ducks, not often, goats. Some, we used the milk from the goats. I used to milk the goats. And you have to hook your life like that around, and then you progress. And then, but it was interesting, very interesting.
So you were a milkmaid then?
Well, I was a milkmaid. I think I was just about everything.
And how old were you when you were doing
I
that?
was pretty young.
You were a young little girl?
I was a young little
Uh-huh,
girl. I was real
uh-huh.
cute.
Of course, without a doubt.
But I learned how to do all that, and it didn't hurt, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so we couldn't play after school with our friends. We had to go straight home and get to doing the chores and stuff.
Well, you also had a large family,
Very
Rose.
large family, very large.
How many kids in the family?
Growing up, there was about 12, but then they started to marry or go into the service, so that they weren't all there at the same time.
Uh-huh.
But
Who was the oldest? Do you know?
Rosendo, and he was the one
Rosendo.
that injured his leg. Well, I think he cut it because it was terrible to look at it, and he couldn't walk very well. So he never really had a job like the others. And then Mike started to work, and then they progressed into the PFE, and so did my other brother, Agapito. And Candido, or Candy as you call him, he was a lazy one. He escaped. He got lost all day long.
I used to play handball with Candy. He was not lazy. But
He
anyway.
wasn't, but he was never around to tell him to do chores.
So your older brothers worked for the railroad, for the
For the
PFE?
railroad PFE,
For the
Mike
PFE.
and Aggie,
Uh-huh.
and Rosendo couldn't because he had hurt his leg, he couldn't work. And
What about the girls like you? Did you?
I was the eldest of the girls, so I got to do a lot of stuff that the boys did
Uh-huh.
because they were short on boys.
So you went to Garfield at school?
I went to Garfield, yes.
Wilson?
Wilson.
And Colton High School?
Colton High School and the junior high, yeah.
You said that you didn't finish Colton High School. Why? You
Well,
went up to ninth grade.
Yes, and the reason that they told me that I couldn't go because they couldn't buy me clothes.
You couldn't afford to buy
They couldn't
clothes?
afford to buy clothes for me, but if it had been a boy, they would have provided for that.
Mhm.
But because I was a girl, I was dispensable.
So you were a second-class citizen?
I think so, you
Uh-huh.
know. Even though my mother knew better, she should never have done that. And she cooperated with the rest of the family, because I think she decided what went on in that house more than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to stay home
Mm-hmm.
and feed the chickens, and do the laundry, and do the other stuff she couldn't do.
So
I
you
was
stayed
like-
home to help mom
To help mom.
and dad take care of the animals?
I helped with that. My dad didn't do a whole lot. My mother did. She
Mhm.
did everything.
Mhm.
But I was there and I helped her with just about everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
So you went up to ninth grade?
ninth grade.
Did you ever get your high school diploma?
Yes, I went back. I went and got the classes that you need. And I went from one school to the other. I went as far as Fontana to see if I could get into a class. I finally got my diploma, and then.
When did you get your diploma, Rose?
Where? Or
Yes, when?
I'd have to look it up.
How old were you when you got your diploma? Más o menos.
Más o menos, I don't remember, to tell you the
Mhm.
truth, I don't remember.
But it was way,
Way back when,
Yeah.
way back when,
Uh-huh.
and then, stuff just evolved.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I did get my diploma, and then I missed high school for the same reason, they couldn't afford to send me to school. However, I did go to night school, I went to San Bernardino, I went as far as Fontana to take adult education courses so I could get my diploma. I finally did.
You got your GED
My
then?
GED,
Yes.
yes, I did, and then, so that I have evolved.
Do you ever regret that you didn't get continue your education when you were young?
Don't you know, don't you just feel it? I do.
Mhm.
Because I know that if Connie can do it, I could have done it too.
Mhm.
But she was younger, she was always a standout when she was a little girl. Wherever we went to pick fruit, and we enrolled her in a school, she was always outstanding. And of course, we all worked hard at her, but at the same time, we were also envious.
Mhm. You mentioned Connie. Connie was your younger
She
sister?
was younger, there was another one, Angie, Angelita, and then Concha.
And
Concepcion.
Connie got her master's degree here at Cal
Yes, I
State.
know she did.
And that book that's over here, she wrote that book.
I know she did.
It's her master's thesis
Mhm.
in the School of Education.
Mhm.
And she did a wonderful job
she did good.
talking about people that were born and raised in Colton. She did a great job.
Well, that's why I want to read it.
So you call her and tell her, I
I'll see
want to
if I can
borrow
get a
your book.
from her, yeah.
Now tell me, having lots of kids, and you took care, you helped mom take care of the household and the animals. Did you also travel to work and pick crops in
Yes, we
California?
went to Fresno. They put us in one of those cattle trucks, piled everybody under,
Right.
and mochilas that you said, and our clothing was in blankets and stuff. And they took us. It was a long drive, and I enjoyed that part, but after that, it was hell.
Now, where did you go to pick crops?
Well, we went to Fresno, and there was a little town there, and I forget the name of it. And we picked apricots and stuff like that. And what else did we pick? The apricots stand out.
Mm-hmm.
That we were there, and then we went to another one. I forget what the fruit was, but it was always fruit. But the majority of it, very little vegetables. It was mostly fruit.
Mostly fruit.
Mostly fruit.
No, did you climb up into the trees to get?
No, they would get somebody to shake the tree or it would fall and we would gather it from the ground.
Mhm.
So I was a rata.
You were a rata. Rata was like people that didn't carry ladders but picked everything
They
that they could reach or was in the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah.
There was a rata.
I was a rata.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So that's it.
And you
That's-
did that every summer? Was it every summer?
Whenever it was time for the fruits to be picked or whatever, they would let us know. We would get
Uh-huh.
into this huge trip. We didn't do that for too many trips, maybe twice.
Mhm.
But it was some experience, it really
Mhm.
was. It was hard. You had to live in tents, which really wasn't all that bad.
Uh-huh.
You had your stove up there and your food and my mother was always there. She made the tortillas and the lonche and stuff. But my dad was never, my father was non-existent.
Uh-huh. So your mom really took
She
care of
took care of
everything.
everything and she did a pretty good job considering.
Uh-huh,
She
uh-huh.
really did.
Yeah.
And then we would go to church on Sunday. You have to go.
Well, tell me about church. Did you go to San Salvador?
Yes, Father Valencia was there and he was an experience. But he was good, you know, he had this loud personality, but he was a good man, he really
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
He never did anything to anyone, to hurt anyone. I
Yeah.
don't think that I know of, he never did.
Yeah.
And
Well, he
I'm-
was a good handball player.
I know he was. And he would go to my neighbor's house a lot, see Mrs. Candelaria. Candelaria lived across the street from us. He would go visit, I think they were from the same town in Mexico or something. They had a connection way back when. And he would go visit her all the time. So we would see his little car coming.
Uh-huh,
And I was jealous because he didn't come to our house.
But you did go to church on a regular
Oh,
basis.
we went to church every Sunday.
8
And then
o'clock or 10 o'clock mass?
Whatever it was, we went to church and we had to walk all the way by the park,
Uh-huh.
all the way to the church on what street is it?
L Street?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
we had to walk. Well, it really wasn't that far,
Uh-huh.
but we were clean when we left, but we weren't clean when we got back.
Now tell me, where did you folks live? Where did you
On
live?
Fernando Street, a very small little house. It was, how many bedrooms? Had 3 bedrooms and one added on, and then they added more in the back, so the big boys could sleep back there.
Uh-huh.
But it was a very small house.
Uh-huh.
It was a little kitchen and that's it. We had an out. We had an outhouse or a bathroom until finally they put in the regular.
Yeah.
That was the worst part of my whole life was that.
Well, I think most of us that lived in South Colton experienced that, really.
Yes.
We didn't have the
Well,
services.
We didn't have them and it was expensive to go into that kind of service and we didn't have, there was not that much money in South Colton.
Uh-huh.
People were poor.
Uh-huh.
They really were poor down there. We were one of the poorest probably.
Well, especially during the Depression, really.
Mhm.
During the Depression.
Yeah, I don't even.
Because you were a little girl during the
And
Depression.
I remember everything. I remember. Well, I remember one time, I was so sick and I had this bellyache or something. Couldn't afford to go to the doctor, so I got well by myself. Somebody must have prayed awfully hard for me,
Uh-huh.
because I got well by myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you got stung by an animal or something, or bug or whatever, you had to recover on your own.
Mhm.
It was a very drastic thing that they took, when they took us to the doctor.
So, as a little girl, you went to school and you had to get home quickly.
Yeah, we
Um,
couldn't stop and talk
Yeah.
and have fun with the friends. I had to get home early, right
Yeah.
away.
Now, as a teenager, Rose, uh, what kind of entertainment did you have?
I didn't have any.
Nada?
If my brothers went to a dance, remember the Orbita, remember that hall over there? What was it
Yeah,
called?
near where the
Where
Inland
the
Center is
Inland
now.
Center.
Yeah, and they would have fiestas and stuff there, and I wanted to go so bad, but they never took me.
What about the Fiestas Patrias in
Oh, we
Colton?
went to all that. We would walk over there. I would go
Mhm.
with my brothers. We would walk.
Mhm.
We did go to those. So that was a little bit of fun.
Mhm.
And so we did that, and Easter was fun because we had they would hang the devil up. He was dressed in black, and then we would bang on him.
Mhm. Judas.
Judas.
Judas, yeah.
Yes.
And that was one of the projects that Father Valencia had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pobrecito.
Yeah, he
Pobrecito.
would hang Judas from one building to the steeple of the church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. We
he
remember.
would swing back and forth,
Yeah.
and then light all the fireworks, and boom,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, and so that was kind of an entertaining thing, and other than that, we didn't have a whole lot of stuff going on out there.
But church, you did attend
Church, we attend
regularly.
church, and if there was a function at the church, a fiesta or something, we
Mhm.
might go.
Did you have Jamaicas at that time?
Yes, there was.
¿Qué eran Jamaicas?
Well, they bring musicians in and they play, and you can dance to it or whatever. They did have that
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
But we didn't participate in it that much, 'cause I was
Mhm.
little, I was still
Mhm.
young, and we went and we saw what was going on, then we went home.
Mhm.
Where did they have those Jamaicans?
There was a little vacant, you know where that, not the liquor store, across from the liquor store in South Cornwall, in La Cadena,
Mhm.
there was an empty lot, and they would have him there. So that it was in walking
On the
distance.
corner of N and La Cadena?
Yeah, it's right in there
Yeah.
someplace. I might be mistaken a few yards or whatever, but
Yeah.
they had that, and so we participated in that.
Mhm. Now, do you remember your friends that you went to school with?
I didn't have any
Either
friends.
Garfield or Wilson?
I didn't have any friends.
¿No te
I
acuerdas
had-
of anybody that?
See, there was some, but I didn't hang around with anybody because my mother said, get home, come home right away, blah, 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 blah. And so I did have some friends, but I never associated with them.
So it was tough for girls then?
It was tougher for the girls than it was for the boys. The boys could get away and play handball or do whatever, but not the girls, especially me being the eldest.
So you were pretty well
I was
told you get
controlled.
home
I was
and you don't go
controlled.
out, you were controlled?
I couldn't have boyfriends, and if I had boyfriends, there was a boy that I liked, well, yeah, maybe, maybe not,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that went on in my life, not
Mhm.
much.
Mm.
But you know what? I don't feel any hate about
Mhm.
it. I just wish it had been different, but
Now, did you work after you left high school?
I went to work, where did I went to work? In a laundry in San Bernardino, and then I married
How,
my
how did you get to San Bernardino?
bus.
The
There
bus?
was a bus.
Uh-huh.
that went- got the
Was the
job.
bus service in South Colton or
It
did you have to
was-
walk to North Colton?
I was halfway in between, halfway. I remember I used to catch it by, there's N Street,
Mm-hmm.
around in there, I think I would catch
Mhm.
it. And if not, then I wouldn't go to work.
Mhm.
And I went to work at the laundry, and I was there for a while. And then I married my husband, thank
Now,
God.
how did you meet your husband?
Oh, he was a friend of my brother.
And your husband's name is Ralph?
Rafael.
Ralph Robles?
Mhm.
He's also from Colton?
See, well, he's actually from Poland. They came from the Arizona side. He was born in Arizona, I think.
Okay.
So they come up from that way, but
And his dad was,
he
worked for the railroad?
He was a big chief in the railroad.
Uh-huh.
He was the crew, he ran the group.
Okay.
So
So from Beaumont to Colton, Dad worked for the railroad,
He
Ralph
worked-
worked for the railroad.
Yeah.
And then you met Ralph in Colton?
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh. How did you meet him?
He was a friend of my brother's, and he would go to the house.
Which brother?
Agapito.
Agapito?
Did you know everybody?
Sí.
Oh, no,
sí,
él,
yeah.
and we liked each other, so
Mm-hmm.
we wound up getting married.
Hmm.
And there was no.
Was it love at first sight?
No, love at first or second or third sight. I didn't have too many chances to go out. So
Yeah.
when he kind of fell for me, well, I was proud. Maybe
And,
not proud. but I
and
was-
how did he ask you out? How did he?
I don't know how he did it,
Did
but we
he-
did get to go out. But it was mostly during the day, and he would take me to places like the park and that kind of thing. But never in the evening, never in the evening, and I don't know why.
So it's during the day that you got together. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Father Valencia married us.
And how many years did you go out with him before you got married?
It wasn't years, it was maybe a year,
Uh-huh.
maybe a year.
Uh-huh.
So, because he was a friend of my brother's, I had to be careful.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They went to school together with Agapito,
Uh-huh.
and they both graduated at the same time, and that's how I got to know him a little better.
Uh-huh.
And my brother didn't like it, but he didn't object, he couldn't stop me, so.
Yeah.
So that's how
And
it
you
started.
got married at church in
At
Colton?
the church in Colton,
Uh-huh.
and Father Valencia married us, and the whole thing, did all the court requirements and
Uh-huh.
everything.
Uh-huh.
And I did not get pregnant.
How come?
So how girls that were so, that did, you know. and
Well, tell me about your children. And how many children did you have?
I have 4 children. My eldest is my daughter.
And your daughter is a
Victoria.
chemist, you said?
She is a chemist. She works at Bourne's. She's divorced. She's been divorced for years. And she's got 2 children, a daughter, a graduate of Stanford. She's now in Texas, and I don't know what the heck she's doing down there. I think she's some kind of a lawyer,
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
but she was an outstanding student all her life. I
uh-huh.
don't think she's ever gonna get married either.
Yeah.
And then she had a son with troubles, so he's still with her. They live together, and so, I don't know. what
And
the-
they live also in Grand Terrace,
in
like you live in
Grand
Grand
Terrace,
Terrace?
yes.
Uh-huh.
And
Now,
then-
your son?
My son, Ralph.
Uh-huh. Ralph Jr.? Uh-huh. No lo conozco, yeah.
Está güero.
Uh,
He lives close to LA, and he was a slow starter. He was very bright, but he had problems learning.
mhm.
So one of the school teachers used to go out of her way to come to talk to us at the house. And so we knew he had the capability. It's just that he was slow in some ways. But he came out of it, and he's done very well. What is his title now? He works for the state also. He's a big shot for the state.
He works for the state of
He goes-
California?
Yes, and he goes.
The employment office?
Probably.
EDD, yeah, EDD.
He
yeah,
he goes
employment
up,
office.
he goes up to Sacramento sometimes.
And your other son?
My other son, Teddy, he didn't amount to too much.
Mhm.
He's still at home, he's still sick, and he's still chugging along, and he's a good student, though.
Where does he live?
He lives in Colton as well.
Oh, okay.
So they're all around me, kind of
Uh-huh,
close. And then
uh-huh.
Eric also lives close to my house.
Mhm.
He lives not too far from my house. He's a lieutenant with the highway patrol.
Mhm.
So
Oh, he works for the highway
for the
patrol?
highway patrol.
He's a lieutenant?
He's a lieutenant.
And his territory is this area?
In this area, he's out of the, not Phoenix, but the Palm Springs in this area.
Okay, Palm Springs, this
Yeah,
area?
out this way, and
Yeah.
he's been there a long time. He's gonna retire.
Oh, he's a supervisor for the area then?
Yeah, and so he's gonna retire before too long.
Mm.
And he hasn't had any close calls, thanks to God, but he did one time. He
Mhm.
got injured in a freeway. He got banged up in it, that was blood on his face. I don't know what happened.
Well, you know, you're talking about your family, and your second oldest brother was Mike,
Yes.
Mike Mercado.
Mike.
I knew Mike, he was a great not
Ball
only
player.
handball player, but also a baseball player.
He was very good at everything.
Yeah,
he
tell us
tried.
about Mike.
Mike was different from the other ones. He was taller, very nice looking, very güero, and he always excelled in whatever he did in sports. The other ones tried, but they just couldn't
Mhm.
match up. But he did very well, and he met Margaret Aranda, and they were married.
He married one of the Aranda girls?
Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret Aranda.
There was Ramona, and then Margaret, and then Rosa, and then on down the line. But he married Margaret, and
And Mike played for the Colton Mercury's.
Mercury's, yes, and he also worked for the railroad, and so did my brother Agapito. They worked for the PFE.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They worked for the same company, and then they branched out into whatever. Mike got married, and Agapito still stayed home, and then he went to school. They were in the army. I forgot that.
Mm-hmm.
They were when they called you in. That
Was that World War II?
must have been.
Okay,
Yeah. Mhm.
okay, both of
Had
them.
to do with the
service.
Japanese and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we would talk about the camps where they would put him,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was in the service as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about your neighborhood. Did your neighborhood had a name for it? Did they call it La Paloma?
La Paloma,
La Paloma?
more or less La Paloma.
So
Yeah.
you were born and raised in La Paloma?
It wasn't the greatest place to be raised up there.
Why?
People were so poor, and it was like, it wasn't a slum. We were close to the dump, not too far from the dump. We could go select our own stuff from the dump.
Mhm.
And that wasn't.
Were you close to the river también, Santa Ana
Yes,
River?
the Santa Ana River wasn't very far, maybe a block and a half away, or 2 blocks, at the
Uh-huh.
most 2 blocks.
Uh-huh.
And when it was flooded, when the water went up real high, you could see it.
Mhm.
One year they had to take us out of there.
Do you remember the 1938 flood?
Must have been the year that they took us out.
¿Qué pasó?
When nos sacaron and the water started to recede, so we were able to go back, but it was pretty high. You could
Mhm.
see it going almost to the top.
So they asked you to vacate?
To vacate, they finally asked us to vacate, so we
Uh-huh.
went to stay with some friends
Yeah.
of my mother or whatever.
Was your house damaged or anything?
No, the water didn't get that close.
Oh, it didn't.
No,
Mhm.
no, but it could have very easily. Wasn't much more to go.
So you were young, you were about 5 years old,
I remember.
and you remember that? Uh-huh.
What? I've gone through hell.
Mhm.
I've gone through hell.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I survived,
Uh-huh.
and I can still laugh.
Yeah. You said you went through hell. ¿Por qué? What does that mean?
I went through my own personal hell because I wanted more out of life. I wanted to have a better job. I did do that. I worked for the county for a while, but nothing permanent. I wanted a permanent job.
Mhm.
And then I got married, and that's the end of everything.
Mhm, mhm.
Started to have my children.
And when you lived in La Paloma, you lived off of Congress Street?
Well, Congress was like this, and then there was another Pine. What was it? Congress was like this.
Mhm.
Pine was like this. Congress was like that,
Mhm.
and then Fernando was like this.
Right.
And it faced the river at the end.
Yeah, it ended at the river. It ended at the river.
Yeah.
Now, were you, were you familiar with the projects that were close to that area?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah, they finally finished them.
Mhm,
They finished
mhm.
them, and there's still people living there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, did you have any friends that lived in the project?
No.
No. What about the Vanakins? He almost lived
Vanaken,
across
yeah,
from you.
Her mother used to visit us.
Sarah Vanaken.
She used to visit my mother a lot. My mother never even had time to talk.
Mhm.
She would go see us and she would try to help us, but it was an impossible thing because my mother was also overwhelmed with all the kids and everything.
Mhm,
My father
mhm.
was never around, he did whatever he wanted.
Mhm.
And she tried to help us, but we couldn't be receptive to it because life was such that there was no way we
Mhm.
could have done it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But- And Mary, I know Mary, her daughter, and Bobby Vanaken, I think they're all gone.
They are, except
And
Mary.
Fred-
Mary's
and
still
Fred-
available of our life.
And Freddie died too, the 2 brothers.
Yeah, Freddie Vanaken Jr. passed away. George Vanaken.
The one that was
the
my
oldest.
age.
Yeah, he's the oldest. He
Mhm.
passed away too. And Mary's the only one that's left.
She's left and I see her, but I don't see her that often. And the reason I see her is because she is comadre with Paul Muro,
Mhm.
Paul and Mary Muro.
And Danny Muro.
And Danny Muro, he's involved with them.
Uh-huh.
And through them I hear about him.
Mhm.
But they were good.
Yeah, she married Gil Garcia.
Gil Garcia.
Gil Garcia.
Yeah, she did.
Right. Yeah.
I haven't heard from her in, I don't know how she's doing or anything. I hope she's doing okay.
Oh, I saw her at the at the Wilson picnic,
Oh,
and
did
she
you?
was doing well.
Good.
Let me ask you about going to Garfield Elementary School. Did you have a good time being a student at Garfield? ¿Por qué?
Estábamos muy pobres. Estábamos muy pobres. We couldn't enjoy dressing up or anything like that. I like to dress up. And we didn't have the, we were happy as a poor person can be. We always had enough to eat. I don't know, to me it wasn't a happy time.
How did you know you were poor?
Comparing to the neighbors, they would wear new shoes once in a while. Because my father refused us to go on welfare. He was too proud.
Oh, he didn't say, no, we're not going on
We were not
welfare.
gonna go to welfare, we would not be getting those little dresses that they gave the girls and whatever clothes they did for the boys, but we were never allowed to go join welfare.
Mm.
So, we did without.
Mm-hmm.
He was too proud. He didn't do enough for us, yet wouldn't let us do anything for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Now, at Garfield, you said you were too poor, and you knew that you were poor.
Mhm.
What were some of the other things that you didn't like about Garfield, that you liked about Garfield?
Well, Garfield was an opening door for me, because I was able to see what the other kids were doing and wearing and saying and doing. A lot of them were poor like we were.
Mhm.
We weren't the only ones.
Yeah.
And, but it helped me to open my eyes up about other people's lives. And it wasn't pretty though.
Mhm.
It wasn't pretty.
Mhm.
And well, we got through it,
Mhm.
but not because we wanted to go through it.
Mhm. It just you had to do it.
We didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
We either did that or we died.
Mhm.
We starved or whatever. And my mother probably would have killed because she did the best she could with what she had. It
Mhm.
wasn't very much.
Mhm. What about Wilson, your experience in Wilson?
It was kind of a happy experience because
Mhm.
I was more involved in social stuff. They had little dances and they had sports and they had a little bit more.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed it a little bit better.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Were you a good student?
it was fair. I would go home and I wouldn't be able to do my homework because I had to help.
Mhm.
So that didn't help me any.
Mhm.
However, I never failed anything. So I held my own with what I had.
Mhm.
Probably I would have done better if I had had the chance.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
How about the teachers? Did they treat the students well, as far as you remember?
some of them did, some of them didn't. I remember this male teacher at the junior high. There was this Hispanic girl that was feita, black teeth, and she was tall and skinny, y estaba morena.
Mhm.
And he didn't like her for some reason. He kicked her in the hallway of the junior high school. I remember that. So I was on one end of the hall, and he was on the other, and she was going into the math class or something, and I could see him go like this. He actually kicked her.
Mm.
I never said anything because it, wasn't my
Mhm.
place, but I wish I had.
Mm.
You know, he wouldn't. They probably would have overlooked everything. I don't know the way
Mhm.
they did stuff.
So mom and dad didn't complain?
Mom and dad never knew anything.
Mm.
They never knew about our lives. My father could care less.
Mhm.
He didn't care about us.
Were you allowed to speak Spanish at school, or?
That's all we did, speak Spanish.
Oh, that's all you did? To each other?
To each other, but then.
In class.
But later on, as you can tell, I can speak English. Actually, I like school a lot, probably because I didn't have enough of it.
Uh-huh.
And I encourage my kids to do the same thing, to go to school, to go to college, to do the best they can. And I have my daughter, she's a chemist. My eldest son, he works for the Division of Highways. He's got a big, important job. And then my Teddy's the one that is kind of slow. He feels sorry for himself a lot. And he's always sick, he's always this, and the little one, Eric's a little fighter. He's a
Now, your husband and your brothers went to, were they in the military? You said they were in the military.
My husband was, and who else?
You said Mike was in the military.
Mike was in the military.
And Agapito was in the
Agapito was in the
military.
military. Mike went to Germany. Agapito didn't go out of the country.
Uh-huh. And your husband?
My husband was in Korea.
In Korea.
He was.
So he's during the Korean conflict.
He went during the Korean conflict, and he was a sergeant. He got somewhere.
See?
Yeah, and he was pretty smart. He learned the code talk. You know, when they would, like the Indians did,
Mhm.
they kind of, I think he learned that. So he did pretty well.
Now, when they came home from, they left Colton and they experienced another world, says, another language, another
Yeah.
culture, different experiences, different training. When they came home, was there something different about them when they came home? Did they want a better job? Did they want a new house? Did they want, just?
They must have. They
Mhm.
must have, because they all improved themselves. They all later on bought houses and went to school. And my brother Rapito did very well in school. Mike didn't go to school that much, but Rapito did. And then they married okay.
Mhm.
So I guess in their own way they survived.
Uh-huh.
They also, it was tough for them too.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
tough for all of us.
Yeah.
You missed all of that?
Monday?
You missed all of that?
Oh, no, I didn't. I
You did?
didn't.
You
I
were part
didn't.
of it too, huh?
Not at all. Not
Oh
at
my
all.
God.
And anyway, also when you were living in South Colton, you had the fiestas patrias,
It was fun.
you had los progresistas, you had los
Yeah.
trabajadores unidos,
Mhm.
and then you had who were the Mexican American leaders in the community? Do you remember who the Mexican American leader?
Oliva,
Pascual Oliva.
Pascual Oliva.
Uh-huh. How about Pete Lukey?
He was also there. He was always involved. I remember him. He was
Mhm.
always involved. He wasn't a good speaker or anything like that, but he was always involved. And who else? You probably remember better than I do.
How about Johnny Martinez, Jeremias,
Johnny Martinez.
early
Did he-
40s?
Did he play with the Mercuries?
No, he was a boxer.
Oh, well,
He
no,
was-
I don't know. I don't know
yeah,
about him.
Yeah.
No, I don't know about him.
Uh-huh.
I know baseball, handball.
But any community leaders like Manuel Padilla or?
Manuel Padilla. No, I didn't like him.
you- But he was one of the quién más? Angel Oliva, Pascual's
Uncle,
brother.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. They were a little bit, I didn't know them, but I heard, and I think they
You
appealed.
heard about them, huh?
They appealed to me more because they were a little bit different.
Uh-huh.
They were more like I was.
Uh-huh.
And who else was involved? No me acuerdo.
What about the businesses in Colton, Rose? The businesses like
Markets?
the
Martinez?
market where you shop, where your family shops. Who was that?
Martinez, and we would buy our sweet bread from there and cheese and stuff like that. My father would go and sit in their store all day long and do nothing.
Mhm.
And La Paloma, the little store, and then that was about it.
How about La Esperanza with?
Oh yes, my father was real chummy with the owner of Esperanza, but that was a little bit further.
Yes.
But we would go there,
Uh-huh.
and he would order stuff like meat for tamales or something like that, and
Mhm.
we would go there.
Wasn't there a caldera?
Caldera, they had the plunge on, what street is that one?
Fifth.
Fifth.
They had the plunge in Colton for years and years. But as I grew up, they shut it down. I don't know who it was condemned or what.
My dad said that there was a caldera market or something at some time.
Yeah, across the street on N Street, across the railroad tracks.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there was a store there. It was right next to the railroad. What was his name? Oh, I can't remember his
Yeah.
name. You know, it was right.
Yeah, it was. I think it's Calderas there. That.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, that one. And
Well,
then
tell me about the plunge. I've heard about the plunge, but I never saw her.
the plunge.
Yeah, the Caldera plunge.
Oh,
It was on Fifth and Fox Street, isn't
I
it?
got to see it.
Between Agua Mansa and Fog, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I saw it, and I saw when they were using it, but I never participated in it.
Uh-huh.
It didn't have a very good reputation.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if they didn't clean it or what,
Uh-huh.
but we never went there. We went to the other one.
Uh-huh. Talking about the other one,
We were, of course, discriminated there too. We had certain days we couldn't go swimming.
oh, I know, there were certain days where Mexican Americans couldn't go to that plunge. What
Um,
about the show, the new Colton and
Also
the
the
Hub City?
same thing, we had our little section where we would have to sit.
Uh-huh.
And we follow instructions, we follow directions, yeah.
So you go in the new Colton and you know where you were supposed to
We know where we
sit.
belonged, and we went there and we sat and got us kept out of trouble.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, it would have put us
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
It was a bad place to live.
Mhm.
It wasn't that great.
Mhm.
As far as that goes, discrimination, because they all looked down on us, but
Mhm.
we survived
Mhm.
despite their desires or whatnot. A lot of them, I don't know where they came from. They weren't human. You know, they were not human. They were beyond that.
Who was that, Rose?
Los americanos que venían, and they would mistreat us and stuff.
Oh, there was just segregation, prejudice.
Yeah, there was so much of that.
Yeah, and they didn't hold back.
No, they knew they had nothing to fear.
I was gonna ask you, how was it growing up in a segregated community? Because the railroad track was was a border, yeah.
It wasn't good. It was not good. I know that. It didn't affect me too much because I was always at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't affect me a whole lot, but it did affect me when I went to school. Slurs from other people. If we went to buy something, they wouldn't wait on us. We'd have to wait, and finally we got up and we walked out.
Mm.
That's what happened a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So
Those were the stores downtown Colton, the gringo stores? Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't wait on us, so we got up and we walked out.
How did it make you feel?
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there, our hands were clean, we were not dirty. We also worked for the little money that we had,
Mm-hmm.
because we all worked, one thing or another. But they didn't see it that way, they just hated us.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, this is the best.
Now, you mentioned your sons and daughters, your daughter and your sons. They're pretty successful now, Rose.
Yes.
They're very successful
Very.
now.
Mhm.
Now, I would imagine that things change for them compared to
With
what
our
we went through.
struggles, with our struggles and all the stuff we had to overcome, made it easier for them.
Mhm.
Not entirely, because it's still there, you can still hear the remarks, but my son has done very well. The other
Mhm.
one has also done very well, but he's up there in the LA area, you don't see it.
Mhm.
You don't see it, but he's done very well. And the youngest one, he's no, he's not a lieutenant,
Mhm.
I think he's a sergeant. Did I say sergeant, or what did I say?
You said lieutenant.
Well, he is a lieutenant.
Mhm.
He's done very well, but he's
Mhm.
smart. He didn't go to school, he didn't go to college, and he did everything just right.
Mhm.
He's lucky that way, he's got the brains to carry him through.
Mhm.
And he's the one that takes care of me.
Be what?
He takes care of me, because I'm alone now.
Oh, he takes care of
He
you.
takes care of me in his
Uh-huh.
own little way. He'll go to my house in the evening, about dinner time. He'll look around and see, did you have dinner yet? He'll get together, he makes a mix for me and stuff. Makes me eat 'em.
Now, Rose, tell me about how do you know Henry's grandmother?
Henry's grandmother?
Henry's grandmother, Margarita.
Margarita Gomez?
Yes.
Oh, but she was so well known because she played the piano and she gave instructions. So
Yeah.
everybody went to her for lessons.
And then she led the choir at
At church.
At church.
La señora muy quiet, muy, and then Ernie Gomez's grandson, Martha Macaro,
He's my uncle.
there you go. And they were always involved in the church. And I knew Martha and I knew Ernie. We never hung around, but I did know them. We
Mhm.
talked to each other and
Mhm.
stuff.
So, Henry, your grandma was very involved with the church then?
All of her life, when she was a small girl, she was given piano lessons by a lady who had learned in the conservatory in some place in Mexico. And so she learned at a very early age. And then there was a priest from Spain that used to, he was in charge of San Salvador when it was still on 5th Street.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar that it was close to the corner of Aguamansa and 5th Street. That was the original San Salvador, and then later on they moved it over there, to
Oh,
L Street.
I might
But
have heard about that.
but she used to play the organ for that church And I'm assuming it must
Oh,
have been.
back then, Henry?
Yeah, it must have been a pump organ.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she would tell us funny stories about how the priest would call her as he was walking to the church and tell her, he had a funny like pet name for her. I don't remember what it was, but he would tell her something like, Margarita, levántate ya, es hora de la misa, you know. And so, you know, I don't know exactly. She might have been maybe like about 10 by then, but you know, she would play the organ at
She
church.
was already playing?
Yeah, probably very simple stuff, I would
Well,
imagine.
that's all we had there in that church, simple stuff.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, later on, she became a much better pianist and, you know, and taught lessons and everything. But in her early days, you know, she probably just, you know, accompanied the very simple hymns.
Yeah, but you know what? She was well known. She was very well, and I know Martha very well. And she's also musical.
Now, when did your grandma come to Colton, Henry?
Well, according to our family history, she was supposed to have been 2. She was born in 1898, so that would place it around 1900. But it could have been, you know, give or take a year or 2.
So she came to Colton in 1900?
In around 1900,
Uh-huh.
and
Her parents came to Colton?
her parents came. They were the ones that were from Chinampas, Jalisco.
Mm-hmm.
They started on the road before she was born, and she wasn't born. Her brothers and sisters were born in Chinampas, Jalisco, but she was born in Coahuila, San Pedro de las Colonias in Coahuila. And then by the time
And that was still in Mexico,
that
right?
was in
Oh,
Mexico,
mhm.
and then by the time that they got to Colton, she was 2.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Ah,
Very
long
interesting.
road.
so
Ah.
you're almost a Colton native from the day one then?
I
Yeah.
swear. Your story sounds better than mine.
Oh no.
No, I
No.
think it all ties in
Yeah, it does.
because you brought Margarita. You introduced Margarita.
Margarita was an influence to all the people in South Colton because she was a musician. She was available for lessons if you could afford it, and everybody knew her kids. Ernie.
Now, she married. She married young Henry when she was.
She was very young. I think like between 14 and 16. And
And how many children did she have?
there were 8 that survived, and I think many more that were stillborn.
Now, how do you fit in the family?
Well, my mother, Luz, was the oldest of the children, you know, of the surviving children. I think some had been born before her. And I'm the 3rd son of my mom, Luz.
Is she still living?
Oh, no, she passed away
away?
in 1996.
Oh my God! No wonder I couldn't remember her.
Mhm.
But I remember her.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, my aunt Auralia is still alive, and my aunt Carlota, they're both still alive. Well, Carlota's 91, Auralia's 89,
Wow.
so they're
Longevity.
getting up there, yeah. And then
Mhm.
Raul is the next one in line that's still alive. Antonio died, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know, it's been a while.
Mhm. And that's it?
Oh, no, and then Gabriel, I think he actually was a little older than Raul, and then there was a gap, and then Ernie, you know, is Refugio
What about
Jr.
Tony?
Hmm?
What about Tony?
Well, he was the oldest son, the oldest surviving son, but he passed away about 5 years ago.
Tony?
Something. Yeah,
I didn't know
And they were
that.
all musicians.
yeah. Tony was a band leader.
Mhm.
He was
He was good.
He was the main trumpeter for the Sal Vasquez Orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically did, you know, like the arranging and all of that sort of stuff. But Sal was the like the manager,
Mhm.
and he played the piano for the.
And Raul played the saxophone.
Raul played the saxophone, the clarinet, and occasionally a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
But the reed instruments like sax and clarinet were his main instruments,
Mhm.
and trumpet was for
Mhm.
Antonio, for Tony.
Mhm.
Golly, yeah, they were all musicians. I remember
Yeah.
she was well known for the music, yeah.
I just read a story, Henry. Juanita Rodriguez. Juanita Rodriguez was born in 1913 in Colton, and when she was 7 years old, she took lessons from your grandma.
Mm.
Really?
She took lessons from your grandma, and she was from the Rodriguez family, from the owners of the Esperanza store.
Oh
She
my
was from that
God.
family, and she mentions that she thoroughly enjoyed learning how to play music. She also helped Margarita at the church to put the music with the church, and anyway, to her it was a wonderful experience of being able to learn how to play the piano with your grandma. And I think that should be another interview that we will have and talk about the musical influence that your grandmother had, and also the music, the bands that we had in Colton during that era of the 1916s all the way to the 60s. Yeah, I think that should be
Well, I
another
think
topic.
my uncle Raul would be the one that would remember the most
Yeah.
about that, because he was in the bands, and Ernie was asked to, kind of actually almost forced to participate for just a little while, and he didn't like it, because he was more like a choral musician and a
Yeah.
We
piano.
used to have him in the choir at
Yeah.
church and all this stuff.
Yeah, he didn't enjoy playing popular music that much, so I think he likes it more now than he used to back then, but,
Yeah. Well, that would be for another interview.
yeah.
But Rose,
Mhm.
is there anything that I missed that I should ask you about
Oh,
on this interview?
I can't remember. I know there's a lot of stuff that I've forgotten. I
Uh-huh.
couldn't tell you. I appreciate the opportunity, though. I'm very proud about my sister, but she always was a standout.
Well,
And
you know,
because I was the eldest, and Angie, and then there was another one, and her. So
Uh-huh.
she was further down, so she could get more attention.
yeah,
And she got the school.
she didn't go through the hardship that you went
No,
through.
and we did for her what she couldn't have done for us,
Okay.
you know, but I'm grateful. I really am.
Well, I'm also grateful that you were able to be with us today
Well, this is
and give us a little background on growing up in South Colton as a girl and as a young woman
Mhm.
that was very, how can I say, was limited in opportunities to
Very
be able
much.
to,
Very much.
to do anything.
Not only by the area, the people, but my own mother, my own father.
Mhm.
They had put some restrictions on us. Whether they were verbal or not, they were there. We couldn't get out and go and do stuff, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's over and done with.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
And Henry, thank you for introducing and giving us that background on
Oh.
your mother.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Frank, thank you for filming this interview.